See if this sounds familiar. It's end of month and you're struggling to get invoices out. The team's wanting to know what the next job is they need to go to. Where are the job packs? Customers are wanting to know, where's that quote? Have you sent that tender in? And sometimes it just feels all overwhelming. That's exactly the situation this business is in when I first met them. They were at about $1.5 million worth of turnover. They were doing some really good stuff, but the business owner just felt like they were constantly fighting fires. I'm going to tell you about the three things they did and what moved that business from 1.5 million to 3 million to 5 million to around about 10 million in turnover. G'day, my name's John and I've been an independent business advisor for over 15 years, helping owner-led SMB businesses grow and scale. And I want to tell you about these folks and the things that they did, and then you can think about your business and how that might apply. So there are three things we did. I'm going to talk through each of those, why I think they're important, and some things for you to think about. Plus, at the end of the video, I've got a free resource for you to use, which will help you from a practical perspective as well. So let's look at the three things that they did. Number one was they went and got some clarity. And you might think, well, what does that actually mean? Surely they knew what they were doing. And yes, they did, but there was no broader plan. They weren't quite sure the direction they were heading, why they were heading, what they needed to do. So we sat down and kept things pretty simple. It was, for the next 12 months, what are 3 or 4 key things that need to happen in the business? Let's look at what our budget needs to be. Let's look at what our risks are. And let's look at some measures that we can have in place that we can track things as the month and as the year's going on. So they got really good clarity around what they were doing. And why that's important is simply because it gave them a direction of travel. It helped remove a lot of the noise that they were finding and it was impacting them on a day-to-day basis. It allowed them to chat to the team, explain to the team, hey, this is what we're all about. This is what's important. These are the non-negotiables. These are the things that we don't want to do anymore. And it just gave that sense of direction. So thinking about your business and thinking about where you are and what you're doing right now, what's your clarity like? If I said, do you have 3 or 4 objectives for the coming 12 months? Do you? What's your budget need to be? What margin do you need to be at? What's break even look like? Do you know those numbers off the top of your head? What are the main risks? What are 3 or 4 things that could have an impact on your business right now that could negatively impact your business? And how do you measure your business? Not your profit and loss in your balance sheet, but at an operational level, how are you actually measuring your business and keeping an eye on what's happening? So if you can't answer those questions straight away, sit down, cup of coffee, bit of paper, and jot them out. So that was number one, get some clarity. Item number 2 that they looked at was they got support. Part of the reason that end of month was an absolute shambles is because the business owner was trying to do everything. They were trying to run jobs up to the end of the month. They were trying to get stuff out to the team on the ground. They were trying to deal with customers. Plus they were trying to get the invoicing done. And it just did not happen. It didn't work. So the first bit of support they put in place was they employed someone from an administration perspective. They had a bookkeeper working with them. Had been doing maybe 10 hours a week, I'm not sure. But they employed a full-time position. I can't remember if it was 25 or 30 hours to start with. It's 40 hours now. And that person just removed the choke point around the invoicing straight away. And that meant end of each month wasn't such a shambles. We weren't struggling to get invoices out. It also meant a lot of the internal processes that have fallen by the way got looked after. The next thing we did is we got on board a really good accountant, someone that got what they were trying to achieve, someone that wanted to work with them and not just do the end of year compliance. And if your accountant just does the end of year compliance and that's all you need, that's fantastic. But for these folks, we wanted more. We wanted to have some good integrated reporting. We wanted to know what P&L, balance sheet, cash flows were looking like. We wanted to know if we went and purchased pieces of plant, what would that do from a cash perspective? How much could the owner take out in drawings? Just have some really good support around the numbers. And then they also wanted to build their team, and we talked about leaders building leaders. And so that second tier, those people that were working on the ground, we got a outside leadership advisor to come in and work with those people and just help lift their skills so when they were working with their team, they'd get better results. And of course, they were working with me. We set up an advisory structure. We met monthly with the accountant, key people in the business, plus the business owner. We looked at that broader direction, plus we dealt with the operational stuff through the month. So you might go, well, is structure really important? I can do most things. I think as your business grows, then you need different things at different times, because if you are starting out, you're right, you probably are the person doing everything. But I liken it, it's a bit like being a conductor in the orchestra. You know, you might be able to play some of the instruments, but unless you're the conductor, then the orchestra's going to play out of tune. And so think about your business, think about what you're doing, think about where you need support. If you had support in different areas in your business, would that give you a better result? Would that help you scale the business? Would that maybe take some of the pressure off you? You know, would that allow you to do other things? So just take a step back, have a look at your clarity, and then say, righto, what does the support need to be? Do I have that right support in place? And if I had that support, what difference would that make to me? And then the third thing we focused on was around structure. And you might think, what does structure actually mean? Well, we tried to take all the information that was sitting inside the business owner's head and actually build some structure around that. Now, I'm not talking about making big SOPs that go in the bottom drawer and never get looked at, but just bringing a bit of structure. And pricing was the first example. This particular person, they could put a price together to give to their clients, but there was no real structure. You know, they were very experienced and they could almost pluck a number out of the air, and that'd be normally the right number. But if something happened to the business owner, no one else could pick that up. If we wanted someone else to do the pricing, no one else could do the pricing. So we built a simple template, just a pricing template based on what their target margin needed to be and how they did it. We brought some structure in around invoicing. So again, it wasn't just people doing stuff ad hoc, but we just documented a very simple written process to go, these are the things you need to do. Onboarding new staff, they built some structure around that. Their health and safety, they had a focus on that. And so they just built structure into the business bit by bit over the years. This didn't all happen at once. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in the first month. This was a thing that took a number of years to build. And you might go, well, do I need that structure? You know, I'm just a small business. I might only have, half a dozen people on my team. Do I need all that structure? Well, I guess it depends. If you want the business to be solely dependent on you, that you're doing absolutely everything and you're controlling everything, maybe not. But if you want to scale that business, if you say, look, I've got aspirations to grow, then yes, I believe good structure with good support systems and good clarity gives you the growth. So by doing those three things, getting clarity, getting support, and getting structure, they were able to increase not only just the turnover, but also the profitability. And I remember when we got to around about that $3 million mark, we thought, this is looking pretty good. You know, we're in a good profit zone now. Wasn't a lot of profitability down at that $1.5 million mark as such, after you take out wages, cost of sales, all the other expenses. But when they got around that $3 million mark, it was like, this is pretty good. They got to 5 million a year or so later, and it's like, crikey, this is, I don't think we can go past 5. I think 5 is probably where it's going to sit. And then they did some things, they made some changes, they took some opportunities, and the business grew from that 5 close to that $10 million mark. But here's the cool thing. It didn't just grow and it just didn't become more profitable, but it became less reliant on the business owner. They brought some more key people into the business, some more support. That took pressure off the business owner. That allowed the business owner to look for other opportunities. Those other opportunities led to other work, and it just had that cascading effect. So the decisions that they made a number of years ago are still reaping rewards today. So for you, the question is, what do you need to do? If you want to scale your business, if you want to build your business, what are the key steps you need to take in place? And I think the first thing when it comes to clarity is understanding where you're at. What is your position right now? And I think sitting down with that bit of paper and just mapping out where you're at, but also where you want to be, is a really good exercise. And to help you do that, if you look in the description below, you'll find a link to a very simple business assessment you can do. It'll take you 2 or 3 minutes. There's probably about 15 questions, and it'll just take a snapshot of where your business is at now. But it will also give you some practical steps that you can put in place to build and scale your business if that's what you want to do. So the information is in the description below. If you watched this far, really appreciate that. Hope you've got some ideas that you can implement in your business, because I'm a great believer that better decisions normally lead to better profitability, and it's the decisions we make today that give us the profitability in time to come. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, there'll be another video somewhere on the screen to check out. And until next time, catch you later. Bye-bye.